I mean, he had been around forever.
I know. You know, it's such a risk for someone's reputation. You know, he did that program all the way through the tail end of the Bush presidency, all the way through Obama's presidency, and then into Donald Trump's presidency before it came out. Wow. So that program was secret. And I wonder if Christopher Mellon and Lue Elizondo and a handful of others behind the scene hadn't opted to do what they did, find a loophole, retire, step down. Lue left in protest of the excessive secrecy.
What was his job title?
Lue Elizondo, he ran the UFO desk. He ran that program,
Right.
the ATIP. And, you know, there's been controversy around Lue. I'm like, Lue was exactly who he says he was, and he did exactly what he said he did. I mean, I spoke to Senator Harry Reid about it, and I actually, you know, was there when Lue got the letter from Senator Harry Reid confirming all the things. Lue was head of that program.
What about these disinformation agents, these knocks?
Mm-hmm.
I have somebody that comes to mind, and we were talking about him at lunch. Lue Elizondo. Is he one of them?
No, of course. I mean, you know, as soon as he emerged on the stage, I had a very senior guy at CIA who's worked this issue since 1979 contact me about that problem. But remember, the only way that you can control at this point all this coming out because of what we have and what we're pushing forward through media is to control the narrative, the spin. So the people coming forward who get an all-access pass on to, say, 60 Minutes or something like that, are people cleared by this same illegal, corrupt organization because they'll tell the public, yes, the UAPs are real, but we don't know what they are. Well, this is an absolute lie. We absolutely know what they are. Some of them are ours, man-made, and are confused quite frequently with the others, which are of extraterrestrial origin, or ETVs, extraterrestrial vehicles. And those operatives are taught very well to take an issue, grab it, capture it, and then spin it in the direction that they want. Now, the direction they want is endless ambiguity. Gee, we don't know what they are. We don't know what they are. It's nonsense. We've proven what they are. Well, you know, I have 755 whistleblowers.
You have 755 whistleblowers?
Yeah. I mean, this archive is unbelievable.
You had mentioned that you would want to debate Lue Elizondo.
Oh, I'd be happy to. I mean, someone brought that up a couple years ago. I don't have any animus towards him personally. I just know what his role and function is because I was given a heads up on it as soon as he emerged out of the Pentagon and stood up his operation with this young guy I used to hang with, Tom DeLonge of Blink-182. He'd stay at my house in Virginia, but what you expect counterintelligence and disinformation agents to do is to do exactly that. Now remember, all that happened when our documentary Unacknowledged, which you can still see on Amazon Prime and everywhere, reached about 750 million viewers. At that point, they said, we need to take this narrative, acknowledge that these are real, but then change the narrative from the truth, which is what we're putting out, to sort of a fantasy or sort of a diversion. And then those folks like Chris Mellon and Nick Pope and Elizondo would go up on Capitol Hill, whisper into the ears of folks like Senator Rubio of the Intelligence Committee and others, basically telling them false information. But the false information works when you can put it around something real. Now, what was the real thing? The tic-tac, you know, the F-18 Hornets chasing off the coast of California, those events that happened, that the footage was leaked, it was a vehicle for them to attach that false narrative to it. Okay. So you have to understand how counterintelligence and psychological warfare operations are designed. It's very effective. I mean, you know, it is very effective. I would say 90% of people who study UFOs got gaslit. Certainly the U.S. Congress and the media did. So they're very good at doing it. It doesn't mean that it's right, but I'd be very happy to go tete-a-tete on that with anybody.
What do you think about what he says? Because
well, where are the whistleblowers? And I'll tell you, isn't he the same guy? They wrote an article about if I'm not mistaken, who apparently was accused of taking people on a tour and then paying some dude to pay, like $500 to drop flares out of a Cessna. Is that the same guy?
Dr. Stephen Greer on his offer to have a online live debate on third phase of MoonNet.
Who's Greer?
There you go.
I'm kidding. Look, I don't negotiate with terrorists. Bottom line.
Well, I would love to host that, by the way.
Great,
So
do
if, yeah, maybe we can get something going.
Although I have to tell you, he's called me a terrorist, which I find rather funny.
Oh boy, here we go.
Here we go. Hey, I've had 30 years of defamation of my character, so I'm sort of bulletproof from it. You know, so.
Yeah.
That you were just on Joe Rogan, man, talking about Bob Lazar and that whole thing, and that was what we talked about the entire last time I came on your podcast was Lazar and all that.
Right.
And I really feel like they locked down the conversation on that stuff too, because they came out with that group TTSA came out, and it was all these CIA guys with all the CIA background. They're like, we're going to build you a spaceship, invest in our company, give us money. And Tom DeLonge, the Blink-182 guy there, saying, being the ringleader, getting everyone to invest all this money into his company, and promising them a spaceship, and they've delivered.
Wait, what do you mean promising them a spaceship?
He promised a spaceship. He had showed it in the very first thing in TTSA when they launched. They said, we have this technology. You can invest in this company. You'll be part of the team that's going to bring us to the stars with this technology. They promised to basically take all the classified UFO technology and release it. What? And they raised tons of money. Yeah, they raised millions, and they instead gave us an entertainment company. And he made a bunch of books. And including and I think now they're selling. I don't know what they're doing now, but you can go to TTSA and see mostly T-shirts and stuff now. But their big guy was Lue Elizondo, and then Lue Elizondo branched off of that, and he came out. They promoted him as like this was the guy. He ran the Pentagon's UFO program, And you look into Elizondo's background, and it's like, this guy didn't run the program, bro. This guy was a torture czar at Guantanamo Bay. For Christ's sake, he ran the RDI program. Khalid Sheikh Mohammed is accused the guy of being the person responsible for torturing his son in front of him. He basically electrocuted Khalid Sheikh Mohammed's son's testicles in front of him until he admitted to doing 9/11.
Really?
That's what they did.
Elizondo
himself.
This came out in like an interview or something with Khalid Sheikh Mohammed?
It's in all the notes. It's in his files. There's all these guys, all these people that they accused of 9/11.
And he denies all this?
And all the people that, I don't know if he denied. I don't know if he's ever really been asked about it. But you go and look into it. He ran the RDI program. He's named by a bunch of these guys as being the person responsible for doing this.
Jesus.
So he basically helped the CIA cover up 9/11 by torturing the people that supposedly did it.
And so they came and they were like, we need to know who the fuck you are and who the fuck you're talking to and all this crazy Ed Snowden type shit. Wow. And I was like, hold on. And I had to explain that, like, all this really classified crazy shit, I figured that out on my own. I don't have anyone passing me, like...
It's like, yeah, dude, I'm sorry, man. I was tripping balls.
I know. Dude, I'm all sorry. I was stoned one night, and I just kind of fucking did a puzzle, and I was like, whoopsie. Whoa. So what happened then was... Hillary Clinton was running for presidency against, I guess it was against Trump, and John Podesta was her campaign manager.
Okay.
At the time, he was also senior advisor to Obama. So I was holding conversations with Podesta to get to Obama, and I had 2 multi-star generals from Space Command and the head of Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, that Skunk Works built Area 51, their elite engineering division. I had them all on this like fucking emails, and we're setting up these conference calls and stuff. Well, Hillary Clinton's campaign got hacked by the Russians, WikiLeaks, and it outed all this shit about Podesta and her. And what happened with that was when all these news journalists were pouring through WikiLeaks to see what spilled from Hillary's campaign, they found these fucking emails with me and Podesta talking to these generals about UFOs. So Wall Street Journal threw that onto the Wall Street Journal. And then I was like, fuck, I'm fucked. And I'm like out there like fucking erasing computers and doing all this different, I didn't know what to do. And at that time, all these other government people that came out,
let me ask you, why would that be a problem for you if I mean, there's nothing wrong with exchanging emails with.
That wasn't the issue. The more of the issue was like, the more of the
High
issue.
clearance security.
Just all these guys are holding the secrets of the universe, and it's a much. What would happen in conversations is I just knew things, so I would say it. They might not say something back, but I'm kind of thinking that any of those conversations should not be fucking poured over by anybody that wants to just come in and just like make a name for themselves at the bureau, you know?
All right.
So I'm just like tripping like fuck. And then
I can see that.
Yeah, so what happened though is it gave me all this credibility, because then all of a sudden all these other people in the government knew that I was like hanging around with some big boys, so they all came out and said there's a better way to do what you're doing. And then that's when my company was a lot just me, it became something bigger. And so the company came out to the public, founded by myself, one of the heads of the CIA, and the head physicist for the UFO program. And then I hired the program director, the guy that ran the UFO program, and then I brought on another like 8 people from the DoD and the CIA. So they're all part of my company. And the first thing we did was take those videos to the New York Times and out the program. And then we went and spent 2 years briefing all the committees in the Senate and Congress and the Office of the Director of National Intelligence. So now you're seeing hearings. The DoD admitted UFOs were real. The Navy admitted, that's all us. The hearings at Congress and the UAP task force, that's all that. We started all of that. And it all started with me just being a little punk rock kid, just going, I'm going to fucking do this.
Tom DeLonge, who's the co-founder of Blink-182 and who's worked with you.
Oh, way back when he was a kid. Yeah, we had.
Yeah. To the Stars Academy. That was the one thing that you guys worked on together?
Oh, no. That was Lue Elizondo intercepted him, gaslit him, used him, and spit him out.
Oh, okay.
So go look at that. Yeah.
Got it. So you weren't involved in that at all?
No. Tom DeLonge and I predate that, going back to the early 2000s, I think. After the Disclosure Project press conference in 2001. And then, I got to know those guys, and they were fun. We had a good time. But yeah.
Do you still keep in contact with Tom?
I haven't in a while, because once he got pulled into the disinformation nexus, right? Then he got convinced that evil alien, there were these good and bad evil aliens in a war, and then he got convinced, and then he got pulled in by Lue Elizondo into doing To the Stars Academy, and then he got run over by those guys. So I mean, it's a sad story. I really try to stick with people who can kind of stay on track, you know. And but no, I never. I mean, Tom DeLonge was a great guy. We had good times together, and interesting person.
Now, David Grush, do you guys still keep in contact?
No, I haven't been, because I try to keep myself free of folks who don't stay on the straight and narrow when it comes to what they know. Because as soon as we were doing our National Press Club event in 2023 in June, and it broke in all the news that he was talking about the aliens blowing up villages and killing innocent people. Interestingly, the year before, or 2 years before, we had uncovered that in the Dr. Jacques Vallée, in one of his books in 1992, put an entry in that he had received a CIA document from 1985 chronicling or documenting the fact that the CIA was running abductions on, quote, peasants in Brazil and Argentina for its psychological warfare value. I am quoting. Now, we're trying to get that original document, but I think a couple of people I know who have it have been told, don't provide that, you're a dead man. So, but that is a fact. That's 40 years ago, that there's a document that proves that the PSYOPs, psychological warfare operations out of the agency, were conducting abductions exactly for the reasons we've warned about. So I tell people that is a fact, and it's a fact that needs to be proven.
What do you make of this shit that this Jake Barber guy is talking about? Have you heard of him?
Jake Barber, didn't he say he was originally hired to go to Stephen Greer's conferences to try to intercept
and he heard Michael Herrera and
whistleblowers, right?
Yep. He went there to intercept whistleblowers. Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
And then he heard Michael Herrera's story on what happened with him. And he said that he knew exactly about that operation, and that's when he decided to flip and help those guys.
Yeah, bullshit, dude.
Bullshit.
Bullshit. I'm gonna flip. I'm gonna come out and be a whistleblower now. After I went to go hunt down whistleblowers, now I'm gonna be a whistleblower. But what's he blowing the whistle on? The psionics program.
Psionics. What do you make of that stuff?
I mean, that was like they realized Lue Elizondo had run out his usefulness in the UFO op. Okay, because he went to Congress. They finally got the UFO hearings. He finally gets in front of Congress, and then he shows that crop circle photo. Remember the one? Did you see that? Like this is the guy who's supposedly the Pentagon UFO expert. He's seen all the UFO videos, all the UFO files, and has all the pictures and all the stuff. And this is the best of the best of what this guy can't even. This guy's never flown in an airplane before over the Midwest. Has never seen one of a circular pivot irrigation system before. And get the hell out of here! This guy is supposedly an intelligence agent for our government,
right?
And he doesn't know what the hell that is,
right?
That's bullshit.
Yeah.
And so everyone, like, his gig was up at that point. They all knew, like, this guy's been floated as the expert, but he's a counterintelligence guy who's just going to, like, bluff and use his bravado and military brass to basically boss everyone around and convince everyone that he's something he's not. But when it comes down to it in front of Congress, this is what he produces. It's such an obvious psyop on the American public.
So you think this the idea of getting kids and using them to psychically control UFOs and take down UFOs is bullshit?
Well, this is all like the Puharik school of the gifted. This goes back to the these and these are MK Ultra operations. Like, and they didn't stop then. They still go on now. We still have like this Monroe Institute.
Yeah,
but basically, there's people online that
Chris
they try to.
Is a big part of it.
If you're a remote viewer or you're involved in any of this this crazy. They basically they'll approach you online. You have powers, and we need to send you to the school so that you can it's like you feel like you got a letter from the X-Men, you know, like, oh, you can go to Professor Xavier's school for the gifted, and then you're going to the school, but it's not Professor Xavier, it's friggin' Sidney Gottlieb and a bunch of his buddies running MK Ultra experiments on kids. And literally, like lots of people get sucked into these cults and and it's all MK Ultra, like 2.0.
Bro, all these guys.
This is a big deal. This is a former tier one operator who's worked with several other agencies in the intelligence community, and what he has to say is, I think, no less than extraordinary. This is kind of one of the big breaks we were trying to create an opportunity where people like this individual could come forward, a special operator with firsthand knowledge of the UAP effort that the U.S. government is behind, that has been behind for a long time. If it turns out to be true that these individual, by the way, his credentials are impeccable. If it turns out to be true, then and right now I don't see any reason why not. What he's saying is panning out. I haven't personally vetted the individual, but I have spent the last year and a half working with other individuals trying to facilitate these individuals to come forward, this one in particular, and to have this conversation with the American people.
That legitimacy is the best cover. So in order to provide a certain utility to the government by way of a contractor, I have to go and establish a lot of legitimate businesses. I have to function in a legitimate way under existing contracts to build a cover. A cover is not a hollow shell. It has to be layers deep. And the best way to have many layers of cover is to just go do something genuine to begin with.
So let's be clear about this. You're a very financially successful businessman in your own right. You've done well in business.
Yes.
You are not being paid by us or anyone to do this interview.
No.
In fact, you're deriving no financial benefit or in-kind benefit at all from doing this interview with me. Why are you speaking to us today?
Well, because I've got some good news, okay? So I know everyone's been waiting for people like me to speak out, and we haven't been doing nothing the past several years. There's been a lot going on. And I'm very pleased to share that we are moving forward in an official and transparent capacity to explore the answer to these questions that there appears to be no evidence for. And our number one goal now is to function in a private capacity with the backing of venture capitalists and in coordination with some of the most key departments in the government in order to start answering these questions in a transparent way related to the UAP topic.
Are you a front?
Am I a front?
Yeah, I mean, you've worked, obviously, in counterintelligence. You're a trained intelligence operative. Is this some kind of disinformation propaganda operation?
No, and I'm going to say no, and I'm going to tell you I'm not lying to you, but unfortunately, there's no way that I can convince you of that if that's what you're thinking.
A lot of people watching this will be thinking, oh, you can never trust a spook. You know, there's obviously wheels within wheels. This is part of some official government disclosure operation.
Yeah.
Is it?
No, it's not. And again, I'm not going to be able to make you believe that. But what I can invite you to do is, I'll paraphrase the book of Matthew. You will know us by our fruits. So I'd like to invite you to stay tuned in and watch what our new project is about to do and prepare to be dazzled.
So you're part of a team that is proposing to do private retrievals of alien technology.
Yes. Yes.
And you've got the backing for it?
Yes.
Wow.
To expose that sensitive material as a whistleblower.
You were concerned he might take it to Dr. Greer?
Yeah, I was still working in my official capacity of protecting the sensitive data that was on these HVTs. That was my job at the time. So Dr. Greer was scheduling a whistleblower conference in DC and was holding a large event at the press club in Washington, DC. And so we reached out to him. One of my teammates made a bump with him in the Virginia area and shared with him some information to pique his curiosity and to also bona fide ourselves as someone he should maybe consider listening to. And we set up a meeting, and I explained to him up front what our intentions were, that we believed that there were whistleblowers that might come forward with something that is sensitive and it may not be appropriate to disclose. And I asked to become asked to be put in a position of authority with him where I could vet his whistleblowers. So we offered our service to help vet whistleblowers at the time, thinking our guys, whoever had these HVTs, might show up with the contents.
Did they?
Nope, they never did. But it was on this trip that what was interesting at the time is we were contemplating our own whistleblower path forward.
Because of what had happened?
Because of what had happened. It was happening at this time. And so what surprised me is during this event, a young Marine named Michael Herrera came forward with a very particular story and spoke of a particular operation that we were aware was taking place, or operations like it, let's say, were going on. And I saw this young guy get up there, and it just spoke to me. Call it my intuition that was blessed. I was blessed with that night. I made contact with non-human intelligence for the first time, but my intuition was on high alert that night. And when he spoke, I knew what he was saying was true, and no one else was believing him. And he was wrong about a few key things that he was speculating on. And so I made the decision after he spoke to go to Dr. Greer and ask to speak with him privately.
So let me summarize very quickly what Michael Herrera alleged. He was on a relief mission in Sumatra, Indonesia. They were deployed, he and his small patrol, to a particular area, and they were helping find people who needed help.
Yeah.
In the course of that patrol, they were carrying weapons. That's something that's been vigorously disputed by some of his colleagues, but he's adamant that he was carrying weapons. And they stumbled across a craft, a gigantic craft, many meters wide, hovering in the air. And below that craft, there was a platform with trucks, Ford 150s, and there were containers that he described. that pushed buttons with you, what he described, didn't he? He told the Greer Disclosure Conference, which was in 2023, that the paramilitaries pointed their weapons and threatened to kill the Marines, that they were American, they took their guns off them, and they basically threatened that they were going to be killed.
Yeah, that's exactly what he talked about.
Basically, they were told, eventually they were released, they were told to walk away. Their weapons were unchambered, there were no rounds in the weapons, and they were told to walk away. They allowed them to leave, but they were told not to look back.
Yeah, I can't speak to all that. And let me be clear, that is not the type of group I would ever volunteer to be a part of, but I know that there are guys like that out there that get shopped out and become part of these programs. The particular part that struck me were two things. One, the description of his craft. Although the size was enormous, I have no experience with a craft that size. But the craft he designed was precisely the same craft that we had come in contact with in our operations within the United States. And that is, it was a disc with the 8-gun construction when viewed from above. The other thing was he spoke of the containers. And his initial speculation was that they must have been moving drugs because they had something on the top that looked like some form of HVAC system of some kind. And I knew right away those were the same type of containers we use for the SCI team when they're operating and being transported. So
what are the containers used for?
The containers are used for transportation of the SCI team and also just as an operating base. It's a mobile operating base. And so this quickly went off the rails because for some reason, the term human trafficking got put into the story got put into the minds of the people that were hearing his story after I got involved.
So what did Michael Herrera think? He thought they were either gun running or drug running, didn't he?
Yeah, he thought that's what he assumed, they were running drugs. And I knew that those type of containers, when associated with that craft, were used for the SCI team. That's why they had mini split HVAC units on the top, provide comfortable environments inside for humans for either transportation or for operation. You can operate inside those containers. And they're sealed. They're kind of like a Faraday cage in that regard, where it allows you to concentrate. If you're going to operate from those, you can concentrate on your work as a SCI asset, or they're used to mobilize.
So clearly, whoever those men were, they were American, they were private military contractors, and they weren't very friendly.
No.
Are they the people that you feel pose a threat at times to the legitimate operations of the program?
Yeah, I think it doesn't take many bad apples to ruin the batch.
Because to make the point, you're at pains, aren't you, to emphasise that generally this is a well-run operation that runs on ethical boundaries, moral boundaries.
My primary message that I want to get across is that this mass vilifying of what's referred to as the military-industrial complex is a very bad idea. And there are very good people that work over here. Not just good, the best and brightest that America has to offer. And the goods and services that are provided by those organizations which fall under the military-industrial complex are the goods and services that make our country the greatest in the world, and we benefit from those on a daily basis. And so to mass vilify it en masse is not only, I mean, that's a crime in itself, but it's a shame, and we're so hungry people are so eager to quantify where their threat is coming from. We want a bad guy. And this is not an entire cabal of bad guys. There are a few bad guys like it everywhere that operate within the military-industrial complex, and unfortunately, their operations get the spotlight.
So he's saying they're going voluntarily from Indonesia and they're very well taken care of. And later in this interview, he talks about Michael Herrera, who I've covered on this channel before. You see, Michael Herrera had an incident in Indonesia where he saw a craft and then, what he thought they were drug trafficking and or gun trafficking, something, right, was happening. Then he was later told, oh, no, there's humans, right, that they were picking up, right? But the way Michael Herrera describes the program, right, that he did on Gaia, which I've showed that clip many times, he doesn't describe it the same way. And so there's some definitely conflicting stories here.
Mike, what kind of numbers are we talking about with these P3 beings? Are we talking 100 a month, thousands a year, 1,000 a year, or how many people are they collecting for this?
From what I understand, because these people, again, are human, right? So they're susceptible to, obviously, the adverse effects that come from operating this machinery, if you will, as well as the drugs that they flood them with. So they're flooding with serotonin and a bunch of other uppers because it also keeps them at a very high consciousness level. It's almost like somebody going through hospice who's dying of cancer. Well, they flood them with these similar drugs and they're feeling good. They don't feel like they're dying. So they partake in these programs because they feel good all the time until the inevitable happens, which is unfortunate. So,
and what is that?
Well, obviously dying from the drug overdoses that they're doing with these uppers.
So there's a shelf life on these human beings.
Yes, there is. So that's why they have to continually keep refreshing the stock, if you will.
And how long is that?
It spans from, I've heard instances where as soon as somebody gets hooked up to this machine, that they either die or some best case goes to a coma. Not everybody has this, but on the earlier stages of when they were refining this project of hooking people up to this advanced technology.
Is that like after a month, a year? Or?
I don't know the specifics of that. I think it just depends on what the person's threshold is directly.
So they're a disposable item.
Pretty much. That's why they call them assets or P3 assets or
assets.
pink assets.
All right, so and if you want to see the rest of that Gaia, it's put in 2 parts on their website. I'll put links in the description, episode 5 and episode 6, and it's the Psionic Asset Program, episode 6, that really dives into this. But again, links in the description. Go check it out for yourself. Because Jake is describing it like, yeah, they're coming voluntarily. They love to come. They love to be a part of it. They're well treated, all of this. But Michael Herrera doesn't say it that way. He says they're hooked up to machines and they die. These people eventually die. Right? How is that good? Again, very conflicting stories here, and they need to work that out because Jake does kind of stick up for Michael a little bit, but he also says like he doesn't know really much about that story.
So, no, it's fascinating. And so, I think that is a strategy. I hate talking about Epstein. I won't after this, but I do think this relates a little bit. So Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yes. She's in prison now.
She's in prison now.
Right, yeah.
Her father's Robert Maxwell, this, MI6 Mossad affiliated, kind of definitely.
That's a fact?
Oh, full fact. Yeah. And intelligence associated guy. Yeah. And he was kind of always a rival of Rupert Murdoch, like Murdoch, and he would always kind of go at it because he owned a lot of, various, he owned the Pergamon Press, a bunch of textbooks actually in the U.S.
Well, he's a big player.
Big media magnate for sure. Oh, and he would have these lavish birthdays in the 80s and you'd have like all sorts of, really famous people show. Weird. He owned the National Enquirer. And so I always think it's like if you were trying to like marginalize a thing or actually condition people into like believing it or
just
put out the adjacent theory and then like be able to retract it, test the waters, do whatever.
Right.
You buy a publication like that and you can do whatever you want.
And I got some of the most prevalent people in the field to all but admit that it's all true. Chris Mellon, the former Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, he put out that story when 2017 first came out. He says, well, the government's not studying UFOs at all. Now, I interviewed him right after that, and that Zoom interview that you see in the thing, it's a Zoom interview. It doesn't look that good, but I did that interview.
Everyone else was pretty much in person, though.
Yeah. But I did that interview, and I said, Chris, I couldn't put the whole question and answer in because I tried to keep things very concise through the film. But I said, look, Chris, here's the problem. You just went up and you put this big thing in the Washington newspaper.
I think it was New York Times for him, right?
No, it was the Washington something. At the Times or the Post, one of the two, for Mellon for his first story. But he and I said, look, here's the thing. You just said that the government has not been studying UFOs. You're towing the line that when this program that just came out, the ATIP program, that's the beginning since Blue Book. But we know that's not true. I'm with MUFON. We know that's not true. We have plenty of evidence that there's been tons of government programs. And if you were the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence, either A, and you're not telling, which makes you part of the cover-up, or B, you weren't read in. And right there in the interview, right there in the film Accidental Truth, he says, yeah, That's a good point. And then he goes on to explain, he says there's different levels of secret access programs. I had access to most of them, but there's also stuff at the Department of Energy, which was very telling because if you look into what the Department of Energy deals with, Bill Richardson ran the Department of Energy, and Bill Richardson comes out talking about how Roswell was a real thing.
Wait, that's not...
Governor Bill Richardson
He is the governor from New Mexico.
He was, yeah. And then he got the Department of Energy. He was digging into Roswell, and all of a sudden he's head of the Department of Energy. And we know that
my man was I just got to say this. My man was in Epstein's Black Book. He was a feature in that Black Book. That's
why he's laying low.
My
I tried to get him
are
for the movie
right now.
Yeah.
Virginia wrote, "My body was put on the banquet menu." Other prominent figures Virginia named include the late governor of New Mexico, Bill Richardson, who we also know received thousands of dollars in campaign donations from Epstein.
This ostensibly for propulsion,
I mean, this is not really necessarily evidence, but I think it's interesting. There was that woman, I can't remember which one it was, who was a victim who did the murals and the paintings. Maria Farmer. And there's a mural called the Centiles, which is the elite spelled backwards, and it's this big mural of all the different people that were associated. Les Wexner, you can see all the characters. Ghislaine Maxwell's depicted as a dragon biting a child in half. It's all very nasty stuff. And then there's also an antenna going up with an FBI flag on it with a flying saucer hanging off the top of it with Epstein's face inside the window.
What?
So it's okay. So who knew and what was he actually trying to achieve in terms of his own scientific ideas and explorations? And obviously, like I said, he's funding all of these different movements. He knew everyone on the Nobel Peace Prize board. On I was told this, I was told this, I was told that, I was told this. You didn't see shit. You didn't know that. You didn't see it. So you've been told this by who? By Lue, by Chris, by Gary Nolan, by whoever it might be. And it's where's the seed? I want to trace the seed back to the origin point. And where's the actual information? Because whenever you ask these guys, they got told it by another GS-15 or another high level. Yeah, well, I'm friends with his cousin. They fucking hate each other.
Yeah,
John
that
Warner
guy
the
tell the
Fifth.
truth about Chris
Yeah,
Mellon.
John
I
Warner
love
the
him.
Fifth. Yeah, I know, right? He's a classic character. He's great.
Mellon has the X-Protect file.
Yeah.
What happened to Academy of the Stars? Where'd that go?
Yeah, exactly.
Ooh,
I was
it's
talking
gone.
about this not that long ago. To the Stars Academy, that's, Tom DeLonge, I feel, got thrown under the bus. He was what they would call a useful idiot. No offense to the
Sean
guy.
Penn.
Yeah, he was all excited. And I'll quickly, do you know how he initially started this? Tom DeLonge?
He spent his personal fortune
Well,
to
didn't he?
find
No,
out?
he performed at
He was invited, because he had the
holiday
money.
party or something.
Yeah, so he's always been involved in the UFO subject because he's got the money and the connections. He actually knew a dude at Lockheed Martin who was there's a family and friends meetup happening. Would you be interested in introducing the bosses onto the stage? And he was like, I want 10 minutes with your boss afterwards, but yeah. And that's when he had, right? So literally, right? So he walks into Lockheed Martin and then he gets taken, through the classified facilities to a meeting room where he sits down with the big bosses, Skunk Works, all this stuff, and he pitches to the Stars Academy. And he was saying on the radio, you have to go and be of service. I wanted to be of service. So he basically went in there and was like, here's a template. I am your medium into the public, into the, the youth of today. Use me however you like. And one thing I'll say real quick is that despite the controversy, and I wouldn't say I trust this guy 100%, but Stephen Greer was kicking down doors at that point. He had 6 million, 7 million views on Netflix. He's talking about unacknowledged special access programs, illegal programs, real repercussions that need to happen. This is an uncontrollable asset who's out there making noise. Suddenly, Tom DeLonge turns up to the heartland of classified security, right? Lockheed Martin. And he's like, guys, use me. Here's what I want to do. Tell me what you want to do. Suddenly, To the Stars, suddenly Lue Elizondo, suddenly Chris Mellon, suddenly the New York Times. And it just feels like they were like, this is the opportunity we needed. There's a disruptive guy out there who's giving this narrative about illegal programs. It's going to cause trouble for us. Suddenly, here's a really famous guy who's got a link straight to the youth of today. And he's saying we can fucking model it ourselves.
There's an email, I think, between him and Podesta where he's like,
Wait,
he's
what?
like, between
they were tight. They were tight. John Podesta. They were tight.
This came out on WikiLeaks, and DeLonge is like, I want to, give the truth, but I also want, I don't want people to, I want the government to be portrayed as cool.
So
or
these
something,
emails that came out, dude. So on WikiLeaks, so what's interesting is they are gone. I've tried to find these WikiLeaks emails where he's talking about Edgar Mitchell and stuff. People have scraped it.
Yeah.
but they're 404 on the website.
Yeah.
Every single one about Tom DeLonge interfacing with Podesta and people like that.
Yeah.
But back in the
Jesus
day, bro,
Christ.
he was literally saying to Podesta on emails, like, I really want to try and get the youth of today to be more pro-military, more pro-government, and this is how we're going to do it. And so the Secret Machines books and the TV series was all about trying to build confidence back into the institution.
And yet, I look at the people he was talking to, Neil McCaslin, Steve Justice, where I'm like,
where'd Steve Justice go? Where'd Steve Justice go? You know what I mean?
Totally.
This is real.
And I share your frustration around the campfire story stuff, but I'm like, these guys are high level dudes, and like, I don't think
like I said, campfire stories with a TSSCI clearance attached.
Yeah,
right?
totally.
I'm going to go over the key findings from the House Intelligence Report, which investigated the claims that were made by an intelligence community assessment ordered by President Obama and published in January of 2017. First, Putin's principal interests relating to the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not show any preference of a certain candidate. In fact, this report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency. In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community intentionally suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession about Hillary Clinton until after her potential and likely victory. The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts, like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency. I'm going to go over the key findings from the House Intelligence Report, which investigated the claims that were made by an intelligence community assessment ordered by President Obama and published in January of 2017. First, Putin's principal interests relating to the 2016 election were to undermine faith in the U.S. democratic process, not show any preference of a certain candidate. In fact, this report shows Putin held back from leaking compromising material on Hillary Clinton prior to the election, instead planning to release it after the election to weaken what Moscow viewed as an inevitable Clinton presidency. In the January 2017 intelligence community assessment that President Obama ordered, John Brennan, who was CIA director at the time, and the intelligence community intentionally suppressed intelligence that showed Putin was saving the most damaging material that he had in his possession about Hillary Clinton until after her potential and likely victory. The report goes into great detail about the information that Russia and Putin had on Hillary Clinton, which included possible criminal acts, like secret meetings with multiple named U.S. religious organizations in which State Department officials offered, in exchange for supporting Secretary Clinton's campaign for the presidency,